Quigley administration does not want to see anybody under the age of 21 years old buying a gun. There's no point. Okay, this is an adult activity. You know, people can say hunting and all the rest of it, target practicing, fine, do it when you're older. But even then, we're reaching a point in history where we just don't have that wide open wild space. You know, the Quigley administration is very much for animal rights. I'm not really cool with the idea on a personal level of going out and killing you know, innocent wild animals. Even though I do come from a hunting family, I do come from Kentucky, I know how to hunt and fish. My great-grandmother taught me how to fish, okay? I learned all this stuff as a boy. You know, my uncles taught me how to hunt, but my own personal view is I would rather see life thrive. And so in terms of guns, kids just don't need these guns. And if we were to implement that rule right there, then we make it that much more difficult for the unrecognizable high school mental disability person from getting a gun. Now, the other thing we need to do is we need to tell the parents across society, look, owning that gun is not a trophy that you hang on the wall and you take down and you glorify it and you clean it and you tell incredible stories from the time you were in A, B, or C war. No, if you own a gun, they need to be locked up, and the kids don't need to know where the key is. Okay, if you got kids in the house, you got guns in the house. Lock those guns up. Make sure those keys are in some place that kid's not going to get. Like, put them in your pocket, put them in the car, you know, put them someplace, some hiding place that only you know about, so the kids don't get access to those guns. Now, this is so common sense, and a lot of people do this already, but you would be surprised at the number of people who leave their guns laying around the house, or the kids know that mom or dad has got a pistol in the drawer next to the bed, you know. No, this doesn't make any sense, because the probability of the kids hurting themselves, which is happening every year, you see this occasionally in news stories, or kids hurting their friends, their neighbors, and then of course the school shootings. None of that needs to happen if the guns are properly locked up and kept out of the hands of the youngsters, and definitely kept out of the hands of people who have mental disabilities. So what I've just described will be the type of gun regulation that the Quigley administration is talking about. And then the ghost guns, you know, where people buy the bits and pieces of the guns at gun shows and put them together at home. You can put one of those guns together in like 30 minutes, and they're functioning. Well, they still need to fall underneath the category of a regular gun. It doesn't matter who put it together. A gun's a gun's a gun. And, you know, that kind of trying to skirt the laws, you know, we talked about this in a previous conversation, you know, it's just the wordsmith's gone crazy. You know, common sense tells us that, you know, whether you put it together or Smith & Wesson puts it together, it's a gun, okay? So it needs to be regulated the same. Now, finally, to your point, which is really the strength of the gun, we're talking about machine guns, basically, in the most general sense, okay? I mean, if one is going deer hunting, okay, you know, as a boy, I'll just share with you, my uncles and the people in our sort of small family hunting party never saw the hunt as a fair hunt if someone showed up with an AK-47 or a machine gun, okay? It's supposed to be a sport. And again, I don't support that sport. I think it's very cruel. But nevertheless, if you're going out to shoot a deer, then you would use a rifle. And a youngster might use a shotgun. And one could even say the shotgun's not really fair. But in my family world, you know, you let the youngster use a shotgun because the youngster doesn't know what he's doing, doesn't know how to shoot. So he's learning how to shoot. Whereas the adults would use rifles. You know, you pull the trigger, one bullet comes out. If you know what you're doing, then it would hit its target, and then you would be eating deer that night for dinner. It sounds very cruel, I know. There's a lot of people who don't like hunting. But that is the sportsman's way of looking at it. Now, to go out with an AK-47 or machine gun to shoot a deer, that's cruelty. I mean, shooting a deer when you can go to the supermarket and buy a hamburger, It just doesn't make any sense. But to own this AK-47, when the reality is that gun and other machine guns like it, I'm just using that as an example of a rapid-fire gun, to use these guns with an excuse of hunting is not correct, because the real hunters will have the attitude of my family and I, as I've described in the last few sentences. There's nothing fair about a rapid-fire machine gun taking down literally a helpless animal. So what does it mean? Why are people buying these guns? Well, they're buying them to defend themselves from humans. Okay, this is the reality of the situation. Those guns were designed to kill humans in a time of war. Okay, that's the reality. Okay, now if a company of soldiers is invading your town or trying to shoot you, let's take the Ukraine for example. Well, by all means, take your AK-47s and machine guns and rapid fire weaponry and go kill the other humans. That's the appropriate setting for those types of guns. That's what they were made for. Humans are very smart. Unlike a deer, humans can defend themselves. A deer can only run away. We're talking about very different worlds here, okay? If we're talking about going out and shooting Russians at this time in history, the Quigley administration is all for shooting Russian soldiers. As many as the Ukrainians can take down, hey man, take them all down, and we'll keep supplying the weapons until you do take them all down. Good, that's a great place. But to sell these guns on the streets of America with this excuse that they're used for hunting, well, that's not holding any water with the real hunters in society, okay? That's crazy. And then when you combine the availability of those guns with untreated mental disability across the society, we are obviously going to have shooting problems. And it's going to recur again and again and again. So what do we do? What is the real answer to this question? The Second Amendment says Americans have a right to own guns and bear arms. It does not say that the American citizens have a right to own tanks and nuclear missiles and F-16 jets or F-35 jets, and to have an entire boatload of rapid-fire machine guns to go hunting. BS. Okay, so the law has gone too far. It falls into the same category of so many other things we're talking about. The basic idea of gun ownership has to be in place. People need a pistol. They need to lock it up. People need, reasonably powerful guns. Rifles, shotguns, 45s, pistols, stuff like this. That's all fine. Americans don't really need, an army-style type of gun. But now we can even go one step further on this. Let's say that, we figure out a way to form a local militia, okay? Let's just say that the gun club in any town USA becomes the headquarters of the local civilian militia. It's not unreasonable. People who would hang out there are already interested in shooting targets. There's going to be a lot of guns in and around that place. So what if we say, okay, the American citizens still have a legitimate right to own strong firepower just in case the people in government get a little bit too crazy, like in the case of Putin in Russia or the case of China. Well, then why don't we say something like, okay, every community in America, we'll just do it by governmental jurisdiction, city, town, village, you can have your local militia. We'll call it the local civilian militia. That's the gun club, okay? Now, if you want to have these rapid-fire machine guns, AK-47s, if you want them to be available, well, then they got to stay in the local civilian militia. you've got to have these guns locked up in that local gun shooting range. We're going to call this the local headquarters for the civilian militia, and that's where these guns are kept and locked up. And then anybody who's a member of that gun club can go and use them at that gun club. If, for example, everybody can join the gun club. Let's say you got to pay $20 as your annual fee to, your membership fee, or $20 a month, whatever it is. That club is open to everybody in the community. And then the people who are members of that club can go and use these sort of rapid fire weapons in the appropriate target, but they don't take them home with them. And if somebody shows up and they have a mental disability, or let's just say we require everybody to have at least a superficial mental screening to make sure that we're not letting people with these violent propensities and these mental instabilities to have these guns in their possession. So there's some kind of screening process. Then this type of road will cut down on the number of Army-style guns in the hands of the civilian population at random. The guns are still there, and they're still available to anybody who's in that gun club, and anybody can join that gun club if they pay their dues. But we're just taking them out of the hands of people that are very likely to be mentally disabled, because that's where the problem's coming from. The problem's not coming from the sane person. It's not coming from the person who's very responsible and they're taking care of their family, they're doing the things that they're supposed to be doing. No, these mass shootings and these sort of moments of outrage are coming from a very specific, narrow part of the population. And those are people with mental disabilities. And that's really where we need to control it. So everything I've kind of just described here is a much better framework in terms of gun control across the society, regulating who owns and has access to these guns, and yet at the same time keeping the Second Amendment robust.